your research, where do parents fit in? Where does that start to where do they become maybe too involved or not involved enough?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's quite a bit of research on parents, and I think the kind of the things that we know is that parents are there, parents are putting a lot of money, putting a lot of resources into their kids' sport. And very often the sport organization or the sports system does not acknowledge that. It's like parents are always a problem. And it's always like, we need to get them out. We need to, but I think we need to think of ways. And I'm saying this, and I think it's very easy to say when we're sitting in a chair and not in that environment. But we need to figure out a way to involve the parents better, and to make them part of that system, where they can kind of have an input and have something to say. I think we try to, so I think a lot of the issues comes from the fact that you see those behaviors, those ice hockey behaviors in Canadian hockey where parents are yelling and parents, but it's the results of something that happens, that it's not everything is transparent. Not everything is, coaches don't really talk to the parents. Organization, do they know what's going on? So I think we need to have a little bit of better integration of what parents do, and how they can help with the system. Or I have a student now, who's a doctor student, who's doing some work. She's a professional mountain biker, mountain bike, and the way she started in mountain bike was with her dad. And she came across this concept. There's not a lot of research, but of co-participation. So basically, instead of, as a parent, instead of dropping your kids to the soccer field or the tennis court and then go shopping or do something else, or you do it with your kids. And that's how she got involved in mountain bike. So she was mountain biking with her dad, and they were going for rides. And that's how, at some point, she got into a club. But it's called co-participation because as a parent, you're just doing it with your kids. And I think tennis could be like that. You're playing tennis with your kids. You're not necessarily putting your kids into tennis lesson, but I think it's a very good way to introduce kids into sport. Not necessarily putting them into a club, into a structure right away, but as a parent participating, and that's not coaching them. It's just doing it with them as a friend. It's so I guess I'm telling you all this because there's a lot of ways we can try to get the parents involved a little better in sport. We kind of put them aside. They're a problem. Let's put them. Let's try to. But how can we do it in a way where it's respectful, where it's, and parents feel like they're making, they have some input, or
Yeah, I like that way you described that, almost as if like there's a lack of transparency and a lack of involvement that creates that frustration. It's kind of like if you neglect a child in the corner, it's only going to start screaming and wanting to get your
yeah,
attention, right?
in some ways.
And I think of that, the difference being from the environment I've just come from in tennis is that it is incredibly costly to get a child into tennis. Like these parents are there's a lot of money that's being moved around in that sport at the junior level, and I see it as almost the financial cost for bringing your child into sport ends up almost being misconstrued as this ticket to then run the show and to be the one that creates the goals, the ambition, and it does end up feeling like you're running on the parents' ambition rather than the coaches and the athletes, because the finances has almost said, well, I'm putting in this money, I need to see sort of an ROI, and I feel like I can be in control of this, when consequently they're actually not. They're not the one that's running that ship at all. And so that's a very interesting environment that I've experienced in seeing that, because it's quite well known that tennis parents are kind of a different breed of parent in sport.
So I don't know too much, about this, but do you think that there is a lack of transparency from the coach, from the tennis organization in terms of, because if I'm putting a lot of money into a product, if I'm going to buy something, I'm expecting something in return. If I go and buy a coffee and I don't like my coffee, I'm going to go back and they're going to give me a new one at the coffee shop. So in tennis, they're putting all that money in. So I completely understand what you're saying, but do they get something for that return? Do they get a little bit of, I know what's going on, I have a clear understanding of where I'm putting, because if that's clear from the beginning, then I think you would avoid a little bit of those, misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think there's too much transactional leadership going
Okay.
on in
Yeah.
that environment, and I actually think transformational leadership is what's needed. But the mechanism to get there, in my opinion, is having these meetings where everyone is laying out each other's, having clearly defined roles, having clearly mutually agreed plans and ambitions, and doing that. Whereas I think it's transactional because, again, I think the mistake gets made by looking too much at what happens at the pro level and then what can be potentially, oh, this is how we do it at the junior level. So at the pro level, you see many pros chopping and changing their coaches, and this didn't work, and that we're going to bring someone else in. But at the end of the day, you're talking about an athlete that pretty much is autonomous at the end of it. A great one in the recent Aussie Open has been Djokovic and Andy Murray's partnership. You sit there and you go, what's Andy Murray telling Djokovic at that moment? What he's not really probably telling him how to technically develop his game. He's probably there as a hype man, talking him through what it's like playing in an older body, being there as someone, as like a companion that he can kind of lean on and just feel that sense of camaraderie, right? So having someone who he's got in his corner. But at a younger age group, I think people just see that transactional movement of coaching and go, well, that's how you do it. It's kind of, they create that story and that narrative. But actually what I think could be done and almost should be done, and I wish I'd had that opportunity with my athlete, was to sit everyone in a room and go, what do you want? Be open and honest, be vulnerable, be really no judgment, like, in this room. Tell me what that you want, what you want, what you want. Okay, your role, tennis coach, is to improve the tennis ability. The parent, you are clearly funding a lot of this, but we don't want you to not be involved, because otherwise you're going to feel like you're just funding something and not having any input, and you'll feel lonely. And then athlete, what do you want to give? What do you want to offer in that scenario? And for me, I think that's missed, because it's just either what they see is done at the top level, or they're maybe not comfortable in having those conversations. No one's actually open and honest about having those conversations, right?
Because it could feel awkward, those conversations, if parents tell you something and it's like, ooh, how do I respond to this? So.
Have you found a
So
way in which to help people overcome that, to really embrace those challenging conversations between coach, athlete, and parent?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because, I think explaining to the parents that your kids, they may not make it, and this is what I do, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm trying to achieve. And I don't only work on the skill, I also work on relationship and all the kids. And that's my club. If you're not happy with this, go somewhere else, in some ways. But I think making sure that what you're going to see in the club is what I believe, leads to better individual at the end of the day, at the better athletes, but also better people. And that's what you're going to get in this club. If you talk that way and you tell the parents, that's the reason why I'm doing these drills on Tuesday morning or Thursday afternoon, or that why we're having this game, or why we're having those practices. And
If you enjoyed that clip with Jean and you want to dive into the full unedited version of that episode, then you're going to want to click around about here somewhere. Go on.